Remnant II. A massive 75% price cut down to $12.49 is a genuinely shocking deal for an experience this substantial, taking the punishing dodge roll mechanics of a Souls-like and handing you heavy firearms completely rewrites the combat pacing. The crazy hook is the procedural generation. The engine physically stitches together completely different worlds, bosses, and quest lines for every run. Your friend's playthrough will feature entirely different secrets and weapons than yours, making the co-op wildly unpredictable and forcing you to constantly adapt to unseen horrors.
Metro Light Redux. Grabbing one of the most atmospheric post-apocalyptic shooters ever made for 99 cents is honestly absurd. A 95% discount means this costs less than a gas station candy bar. The survival mechanics here refuse to hold your hand. You physically have to wipe mud and blood off your visor to see, and military-grade bullets literally act as your currency. You constantly have to decide between buying upgrades or firing your money at mutants in a panic. Grabbing this for under $1 secures a terrifying weekend underground. The Elder Scrolls Volume 5 Skyrim Special Edition. Seeing this drop to $9.99 is the perfect excuse to buy it for the third time, purely for the mods. Bethesda's legendary sandbox remains a brilliant, occasionally janky playground where you can completely ignore the main quest to become a cheese-hoarding vampire. The base game is massive, but the community has effectively built entirely new titles inside the engine. $10 gives you access to a decade's worth of free fan-made expansions that will completely consume your hard drive. Train Sim World 6. Dropping from $50 down to $9.99 turns a hyper-niche simulation into an incredibly tempting impulse buy. Operating a 4,000-ton freight locomotive sounds like a chore until you actually memorize the startup sequence and feel the sheer momentum of hauling cargo across a pass. It creates a bizarrely zen flow state. The learning curve is absolutely brutal at first, but once you figure out how to brake without derailing, hauling steel through a blizzard becomes the most relaxing thing in your Steam library. Subnautica Below Zero. Catching a 75% discount brings this freezing underwater nightmare down to $7.49, which is practically stealing. The genius here is how it masks an intense horror experience inside a vibrant survival crafter. Constructing a cozy underwater base feels incredibly rewarding until you built it next to a predator that can swallow your submarine whole. The temperature mechanics add a constant layer of stress above the surface, forcing you to dive back into the terrifying depths just to stay warm. It Takes Two. Dropping to $11.99 makes this the smartest co-op investment on the entire storefront. The craziest part of this deal is the Friends Pass system. You only need to buy one copy, and your partner plays entirely for free. The mechanics change drastically every single level. One minute you're fighting a militarized squirrel on top of a flying plane, the next you're navigating a massive toy box using magnets. It completely refuses to let you get bored, demanding constant communication to survive the sheer absurdity. Cult of the Lamb. Seeing this sliced in half to $12.49 offers staggering value for anyone who secretly wants to run an adorable dictatorship. The contrast between tending a cute village farm and aggressively sacrificing your loyal followers to dark gods never stops being hilarious. The dungeon crawling is fast and fluid, but you will obsess over base management, desperately trying to keep your animal cultists fed so they don't rebel. It perfectly captures that terrifying spiral of realizing you actually enjoy brainwashing woodland creatures. Raft. Scoring this for $13.39 is the perfect excuse to rope your friends into oceanic survival. The premise of starting on 4 tiny pieces of wood with nothing but a plastic hook creates an incredibly satisfying progression curve. You slowly build a sprawling, multi-level floating fortress purely by dragging literal trash out of the ocean. The constant paranoia of a shark silently chewing on your living room floor keeps the tension high, forcing your crew into a frantic panic every time you drop anchor at a deserted island. Subnautica. Dropping to $7.49 makes picking up the original oceanic masterpiece an absolute necessity. Very few titles manage to induce genuine thalassophobia quite like this one. Upgrading your diving gear allows you to push deeper into pitch-black trenches, completely severing your connection to the safety of sunlight.
The sound design is actively malicious. Hearing a distant metallic roar echo through the water while your oxygen runs low is paralyzing. Securing this atmospheric panic attack for the cost of a coffee is a brilliant move. Age of Empires 4 Anniversary Edition. Picking up a top-tier modern RTS for $13.99 feels incredibly rewarding. The developers nailed the nostalgic rush of commanding massive medieval armies while smoothing out the clunky interfaces of the past. The asymmetric civilizations actually play completely differently. The Mongols can literally pack up their entire base and move it across the map to ambush your economy. Coordinating a multi-pronged siege with massive trebuchets remains deeply satisfying, especially when you manage to crack open a heavily fortified stronghold after a grueling hour-long standoff. PowerWash Simulator. Grabbing this for $9.99 sounds like a joke purchase until you accidentally play it until 3 in the morning. Stripping layers of caked-on filth off a massive playground with a high-pressure nozzle triggers something deeply satisfying in the human brain. There's zero combat, zero rush, and zero stress. You just meticulously clean every single inch of a vehicle while listening to a podcast. It exploits your desire for completionism so aggressively that you will refuse to log off until that final tiny speck of dirt is eradicated. Outer Wilds. For $15.99, you are buying the greatest mystery box in gaming history. The progression here isn't tied to unlocking new gear or leveling up stats. Your only currency is pure knowledge. You're trapped in a 22-minute time loop, aggressively exploring a miniature solar system before the sun explodes. Finding a piece of lore on a crumbling planet directly teaches you how to bypass a massive quantum puzzle on the other side of the galaxy. It completely redefines how exploration should work, giving you an ending you will think about for years. Doom Eternal. Seeing this chaotic masterpiece drop to $9.89 makes it a mandatory pickup. This is not a mindless shooter. It demands a violent, high-speed flow state where you treat demons as literal resource piñatas. If you need health, you perform a glory kill. Need ammo? Cut them in half with a chainsaw. The movement tech forces you to constantly dash, grapple, and jump across arenas, turning every encounter into an absolute adrenaline-fueled combat puzzle. Paying less than $10 to rip and tear through hell is an absolute bargain. Stray. Cutting the price in half to $14.99 makes this a brilliant weekend playthrough. The perspective shift is genius. Navigating a grimy, neon-lit dystopia as a completely normal cat completely alters how you view the environment. You're not hacking terminals, you're aggressively meowing to annoy security drones and intentionally knocking paint cans off ledges just to be a jerk. The environmental storytelling is incredibly dense, rewarding players who carefully climb air conditioners to find hidden pockets of life in a deeply lonely metallic city. Blasphemous. Dropping to $7.49 secures you one of the most visually disturbing Metroidvanias on the market. The developers leaned entirely into grotesque, religious-inspired pixel art, creating bosses that are genuinely unsettling to look at. The combat is brutally precise, forcing you to master 3 distinct weapons that also double as exploration tools. Swapping mid-air from a slow, heavy mace to dual rapiers to string together a massive combo feels incredibly responsive. The sheer difficulty will test your patience, but executing a flawless boss run feels like absolute victory. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy. Grabbing 3 massive visual novels for $9.89 gives you dozens of hours of gripping courtroom drama. The hook isn't action, it's the sheer thrill of catching a smug witness in a massive lie. Cross-examining testimonies and presenting exactly the right piece of evidence at the final possible second creates an unparalleled dopamine rush. The localization is famously brilliant, filled with genuinely funny banter that quickly pivots into surprisingly dark murder mysteries. You will absolutely catch yourself pointing at your monitor and yelling along with the protagonist. The Planet Crafter. At $11.99, this survival crafter offers a progression system that feels incredibly rewarding. Instead of just building a massive base for yourself, you're actively terraforming an entire hostile world. Pumping oxygen and heat into the atmosphere triggers massive, permanent environmental changes. Watching a dead, red rock slowly develop clouds, rain, and eventually sprawling green forests because of machines you built is deeply satisfying. The sheer scale of physically altering a planet's ecosystem gives you a god-tier sense of accomplishment that typical survival games desperately lack. Call to Arms Gates of Hell Ostfront. Snagging this for $8.74 completely revitalizes the strategy genre. The micromanagement here is beautifully chaotic.
Wann geht's denn endlich los?